Welcome back. Tuesday night, election night in New Jersey, as both Democrats and Republicans will be heading to the polls to vote in the primaries for governor. Now, we're going to be following it, of course, every step of the way, talking to all the principal candidates and people who are following the races. Let's start by taking a look at the latest polls from Stockton University. On the Republican side, Chris Christie's lieutenant governor, Kim Guadagno, is leading by 20 points. So then Jack Ciattarelli is the only other candidate in double digits. Nearly a third of Republican voters, though, say they are undecided. For the Democrats, Phil Murphy leading the pack and by a healthy margin, 24 points. Jim Johnson, the only other person in double digits, a third of the voters, they still are undecided. In a minute, we're going to bring you Andrew's conversation, one of the Republicans' front runners. I'm talking about Assemblyman Jack Ciattarelli. But first, Politico's New Jersey bureau chief, Ryan Hutchins, he joins us right now to give us a handicap and a little bit what's behind some of these numbers. Ryan, thanks for the time.
Thanks, Richard.
Well, let's start on the Democratic side. It surprised me, at least, given how many of the current electeds on the Democratic side, whether it was Wisniewski or Lesniak, et cetera, how the party bosses in Jersey coalesced around Murphy early and they haven't wavered for a minute. Is it as simple to say, as critics have, it's because he's got the deepest pockets here and he can spread the most money around? Why is he kind of walled this thing off for months now?
Well, that's a big part of it. I mean, he was also out there pretty early working behind the scenes to build support. But he's given a significant amount of money to party chairs across the state. And in New Jersey, it's still a local boss system. If you have the support of the local bosses, you can probably win a local, county election. That gets you the coveted county line, which means he'll appear with all the local candidates, mostly incumbents and people who have the support of the local party. And that's invaluable in this sort of an election.
And as you know, Ryan, for folks who don't know at home, it's almost more important when you say North or South than Democrat, Republican in this particular case. At least on the Democratic side, he's lined up the bottom and the top of the state. To that end, Joe Biden was even hitting the stump for him. If you had to bet right now, given the lack of enthusiasm, whatever else you want, who else emerges in the field that, if not in double digits, at least makes this thing a little bit closer of the names I mentioned, Johnson as well, another candidate?
Yeah, so Jim Johnson is the other one. He's a former undersecretary at the Treasury. He ran their enforcement there. He's a former federal prosecutor. And he's made some hay. He's got some celebrity endorsements. Lena Dunham endorsed him yesterday in her pajamas. I don't know why. And he's at 10%, so it's not really a race. I mean, it would take some sort of a miracle based on the opinion polls we've seen for him to pull this out. But it puts him in an interesting position going forward if he wants to run for something else. He's going to have to make up with Murphy if Murphy ends up being governor. But it does put him in an interesting position to be a player in the state going forward.
On the Republican side, I thought it was interesting. Chris Christie really laying the wood when it came to Murphy, saying that basically this is, Corzine 2.0. A lot of people responded by saying he's the last guy that should be talking about ethics here. To that end, how much of an albatross is Chris Christie to Republicans, in particular, obviously, to his lieutenant governor?
Pretty significant. She's still the leader here, right, in this race. The Stockton poll had her ahead by quite a bit. And, an earlier Quinnipiac poll had the race a little tighter, Ciattarelli a little bit closer and gaining some ground. We're not sure what happened there. There hasn't been a lot of polls coming out of these races, so it's hard for us to measure. But the governor, everybody's running from him, right? And how do you distance yourself from him? For her, it's been hard. She's the lieutenant governor, and she's been the state's first lieutenant governor since Christie took office in 2010. And she has distanced herself in certain ways. After the fact, she came out against a gas tax the governor signed last year. She has criticized his renovation of the State House, a project that is going to cost $300 million and displace the executive branch for up to 4 years. But she hasn't been as strong as maybe she could have been in denouncing his policies, which have pretty much, aggravated the vast majority of New Jersey. And if she is the winner this fall, you're just going to see the Democratic nominee attacking her as aligned with Christie's deputy. I think you'll see a lot of that.
Last thing, looking to Tuesday, I think you'd agree it'd be a shock if Murphy isn't the Democratic nominee. Moreover, a little bit less of a surprise if Chitterelli maybe made this close, right?
Yeah, I don't think it would be as much of a surprise. My colleague Matt Friedman had a story today looking at how the Republican candidates are ending the race, and Chitterelli's campaign noted that we only have this Stockton poll and the earlier Quinnipiac poll to go on, and they say the lieutenant governor is attacking them, showing signs that she feels there might be some weakness there, that it's not as big a race as the polls would suggest.
And we will find out Tuesday. Ryan, great job. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Richard.
Bill, it's amazing how much things have changed in just a few years. Guadagno, I don't know what she does. She can't say, she can't talk about what she's done for the last 7 years. Conversely, her opponent can't say it enough. And on the Democratic side, we've had everybody that's running come in here, they all have conceded it's going to be Murphy's night on Tuesday. It's really strange how this works out.
Campaigns underneath the presidential level are getting really weird because they're washed out by the press cycle. Everything is the White House in Washington. It's very hard to get a message out. I do think in New Jersey, I think Chitterelli is going to make this a race. I think he's going to move in. This is going to be very, very close on the Republican side. I agree, Murphy probably takes that on the Democratic side. But, you forget there's an election going on because you're constantly talking about Russia or Trump or whatever it might be.
And Andrew's got a conversation next segment with the Assemblyman, but I will tell you, and this isn't a new thing, I've said this for years, it is shocking, even when he was popular, how little Chris Christie did for fellow Republicans in New Jersey. There was a guy, Carrillos, he literally put all the fundraisers together for Christie. He runs for Senate. Probably wasn't going to beat Menendez anyway, but he was running. He didn't lift a finger, did Christie, for him. And even on little things where he could have thrown a bone and let Guadagno have to do a star turn or whatever, he always bogarted the moment. We've seen him have a fall from grace, but the pettiness and the lack of building a bench in New Jersey, especially when he had an approval rating more than 70% at one time, that's part of his legacy too.
It absolutely is, and I think the Republican Party in New Jersey is going to be stinging from that for a little while, maybe a couple of different cycles. But not only has he not been a positive, but now he's a huge negative in this race. And because of that, I really can't imagine Kim Guadagno winning the election in November. Look, anything's possible. And if Phil Murphy is a bad candidate one-on-one, which he might be because we don't really know how he'll perform, anybody's got a shot, but Guadagno just will carry the baggage of Chris Christie. Can anybody name anything that she's done or any substantive policy position that she's taken in the last 7 years or any way that she's influenced Chris Christie?
I just know when he's down in either Orlando or wherever else, she's the one there during the storm.
Between 40 and 50% of the Republican voters in this primary are undecided. That's with Kim Guadagno having pretty much 70% name recognition.
She's the incumbent.
They know who she is and they still aren't committing to her.
And as we're going to hear in a minute, you got Chitterelli telling you he can't slam Christie enough, and that's the incumbent Republican governor.
Strangely, he didn't slam him as much as I expected. You'll see that coming up next.
Dominic, for me, Biden traveled into Jersey to stump here for Murphy. The party bosses in New Jersey matter a lot more than they do in New York and just about everywhere else. For people who don't know, in New Jersey, it's about North and South even more than Republican and Democrat. That's really how it's done. He lined these guys up in a hurry. I know he's got deep pockets here, but everybody's coming out from him. They say, at least you believe Biden, I don't necessarily buy this completely, but the New Jersey governor's race is as important a race for Democrats this year as any in the country because, A, it's a powerful position, but also it's a symbol, they think.
Indeed, I've heard that as well. And this is an election, Richard, where if you're the Republican candidate, let's say it's not the current Lieutenant Governor, Guadagno. Let's say someone else, surprisingly, as Andrew likes to point out, even though she's ahead in the polls on Tuesday, if someone else wins. How do you get around Chris Christie? The problem is Chris Christie, dominated everything. Literally took up all the air in the room. And now that's gone south. and the party goes with them. So this is almost like, and anything can happen, but this is almost like a full Democratic state where the Democrat has the far advantage. Whoever wins the Democratic nomination, in all likelihood, is probably going to the governor's
The
mansion.
Republicans can't answer, what did you do to stop Chris Christie? Which is a lesson to be learned for Republican lawmakers around the country, because next year they're going to get the question, what did you do to push back against Donald Trump?
You know, they could say about Murphy, I happen to like him, and really engaging one-on-one. They just point to John Corzine. The last time we trusted a New Jersey banker, look what we got. It doesn't seem to stick this time, but given the Christie baggage. All right, guys, thank you. Coming up next, Republican candidates in New Jersey have to figure out how to get the GOP vote while also dealing with the legacy, as we mentioned, of historically unpopular Governor Chris Christie. One of the things Andrew gets into during his one-on-one conversation with Republican Senator Jack Ciattarelli.